Questions will Service Canada ask during the interview with the Canadian employer for their LMIA application, both for high wage and low wage stream. They have a list of questions that the officers in Service Canada are trained to ask depending on the type of position on the LMIA application and other factors. Today we'll be covering these questions as a tool to prepare for the Service Canada LMI application phone call interview. Keep in mind that this LMI application is for Canadian employers. This is not an interview that will happen with the actual phone worker or applicant for a work permit. Hello, my name is Reza and I work with the Ingwe immigration team helping applicants move to Canada. Whether it's for yourself, your kids, your business, or all of the above, we make it happen. And of course, we also help Canadian employers navigate through the Service Canada traps and application forms and all that government bureaucracy. I'm not an actual full-time YouTuber, but I work hands-on with our licensed team here in Toronto, working on actual applications and communicating with Service Canada and the Immigration Department, both inside and the embassies overseas. These videos are made for the purpose of sharing our hands-on immigration and LMIA knowledge with our worldwide audience. And if you're thinking about immigrating to Canada or recruiting from overseas through the LMIA process, well, we're here to help. Get a free email assessment with us by filling out the form using the link below this video. Today, we will be covering possible questions that employers will face when applying for an LMIA. Keep in mind that not all employers will be interviewed over the phone for their application, depending on the size of the company, whether previous LMIA applications were approved or refused, location, industry, occupation, and so forth based on the application. Let's get started. Why do they interview the employer for an LMIA application in the first place? Well, the Service Canada office's goal is to determine two factors while reviewing your application and doing the call. A, if you need to hire a temporary phone worker, whether it's genuine or not. And two, if hiring this temporary phone worker would take jobs away from Canadians or permanent residents of Canada. So that means if there's Canadians who are qualified who can do the job and who have applied, then why are you hiring a foreigner? That's their main concern. That's why they ask you these questions during an interview call with the employer. Here's some general introductory questions they ask over the call, no matter if it's high wage or low wage stream LMIA. First of all, they check with who they're speaking with, whether you're the authorized signatory or rep on the application for the company, the mailing address, how many locations you have under this payroll number, what's the job you posted, a little bit about what the business does. You're looking for keywords based on the application and job advertisement, right? What is the total number of employees on payroll under the CRA payroll number? Were any employees laid off in the last 12 months? And what was the reason? What is the reason for trying to hire a foreign worker? Like, what's the challenge here? Why do you need to do an LMIA? Which is pretty simple, right? You couldn't find qualified applicants locally in your pool of candidates. Where will the temporary phone worker work? Like, what is the location? So you cannot include any other location. You gotta stick to one, or you gotta mention multiple locations on your LMI application if that person will be at multiple locations. If you've only stated one address, they can only stick to that address, they can only work in that address, and the advertisement you posted for that job has to state only that address, right? You could do more than one, but it's gotta be all over, on the job ad, on the application, and so forth. For how many hours a week, and what is the overtime pay? Stick to the same answers you have on the LMI application. Do you have other foreign workers on payroll? Do you have staff in that same role that you're hiring right now? So maybe you're looking for a marketing coordinator, but you've got somebody else as a marketing coordinator on payroll. Well, how much are they getting paid? What's the deal with them, right? Some specific questions they may ask. So for the high wage LMI application interview questions, they'll ask you a breakdown of the positions that you have on your payroll. Who was doing this job previously? Did this role even exist? Did somebody retire? Did somebody resign? Are you expanding? These are key things to know. That's important because if you're underpaying and you've advertised that you're going to only pay, I don't know, $18 when you're paying your existing workers $22, what's the justification of why somebody with less experience or lower education cannot fulfill the requirements for this position? So if you said they need to have a master's on your job advertisement, well, They will challenge you on that, and you need to justify it based on the knock code. And if you're asking for 5 years work experience minimum, get ready, they will challenge you on that as well. Keep to the magic number 3 years or below, unless it's a very specific or senior level. If you stated that the hiring of this temporary foreign worker will lead to hiring of additional Canadians, especially for a high wage, because you have a transition plan, please have the following answers ready, because they're going to ask you when, how, what positions you're planning to hire. So you need to have a transition plan ready for the next 2 years or 1 year, depending on the contract with your foreign worker, in terms of how you will become less dependent on foreign workers. So you either need to convert that foreign worker to PR, or have a plan that by the time that contract expires, you will have a local pool of candidates, or maybe inside your company you've upgraded your candidate skills and promoted them to be able to be less dependent on a foreign worker and be less dependent on the LMIA process. Here's some other questions depending on the occupation, industry, and skill level that they'll ask you in the interview. Does the temporary foreign worker need any sort of certification or licensing, registration? What sort of skills, experience do they need for this job? If the foreign worker is not covered by provincial, federal, or territorial health care from the day they arrive to Canada, will you be providing them that gap insurance? Key recruitment questions about the LMIA application during the interview. So how many Canadians and PRs applied? This is all on the LMIA application, but they're going to look at that and they're going to say, well, how many were interviewed? Why were they not hired? Provide some details and justification, especially if there were a lot of applications by Canadians. You need to be very detailed, and you may need to have interview notes available that you said, hey, I've documented it. So you've got to be ready. Here's some other helpful tips. They will always ask you the same information in a different way. So the same question asked 3 different ways, rephrased. So you need to ensure that you respond in the same way. It's okay to sound like a broken record, right? Responding to the same way, the same exact terminology when they're asking you pretty much the same thing over and over. This is normal and acceptable. Do not become defensive. Never become defensive. They don't like that. Do not show any attachment to a designated foreign worker. So if you've got an LMIA with a name or a PR server, don't be like, oh, well, this person is so much better. Oh, this person. No, you have no attachment, no bias. Do not compare any of the candidates. Only focus on the skill set required to successfully perform all the tasks in the position which has been advertised. You can compare the candidates against the job description only and the skills listed on the advertisement. There's got to be no comparison. Well, this person was way better than this person I didn't like. Do you get the drift? Only concentrate on the facts. It's black and white, folks. This is the government. There's no gray area. And here's some final tips and reminders for all you Canadian employers who are going or planning to go through the LMIA application process and getting ready for that first interview call. Make sure you review the LMIA application forms before you schedule the interview, right? They will call you halfway through the day, probably 3 to 4 weeks later after you've applied. Of course, in most cases, you say, no, I'm just stepping into a very important meeting. We need to schedule a call with my legal representative, or maybe you're doing it on your own, right? But then you want to be prepared for the interview. They try to catch you off guard. Know in detail all your recruitment activities and candidates who applied. Service Canada does not want you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, because what we do is we prepare you, and there's information that we share in the public forums that they don't want you to know about or be prepared for. And if you're thinking about immigrating, whether permanently or temporarily, you're here at the right place. I can guarantee you only one point when working with our office. You will know what to expect, the entire process clearly laid out for you, and all the risks identified, including costs. Our team speaks over 8 languages, and we help applicants from over 48 different countries during their immigration process. Click the link below this video to get a free email assessment for eligible applicants. And if you're ready to apply and would like a one-on-one session with me or any of my immigration team members at Ingwe, you can also book a session directly using the consultation link, which will be posted in the description of this video.